ladies and gentlemen. I guess you all are having a wonderful time all together. And myself, Tofatur Rabbi Pial, I work as a researcher in Center for Governance Studies, CGS itself. So for now, our session is titled as Bay on Fire, Climate Change as a New Security Crisis. So we all are aware that this region of Bay of Bengal have been really vulnerable to different storms. And nowadays, politics is becoming a major part of that storm. And in addition to lose the homes, even borders, economy, and our tenuous peace are also at significant risk due to the rise of the sea level. And many of fishermen, farmers are becoming refugees. And this migration is literally leading to some fresh debates of compassion and a new framework of sovereignty. And the rivers in this region were formerly used for either trade or different connections, now turning out to be being used for some of the points for conflicts and authority even. So overall, this issue of climate change has turned out to be a new security threat for this region rather than a mere environmental issue. And to discuss on this very essential global issue, especially for this region, we have a number of eminent dignitaries for discussing in this session. So first of all, it's my privilege to introduce as the first panelist, Mr. Muhammad Azim Ali Shah, Director, Blue Green Nexus Private Limited, Pakistan. We have the honor to have the company of Mr. Munirul Islam Akand, Honorable Managing Director, Summit Power Limited. In addition to that, we have the privilege to have Mr. Shafqat Munir. He is working as a research fellow, Bangladesh Institute of Peace and Security Studies. And we have among with us Mr. Pai Rao Chang, Honorable Director, Knowledge for Development Foundation. And we have the privilege to have the company of Mr. M.R. Kabir, Vice Chancellor of Daffodil University. And to operate this wonderful session, as a moderator, we have among us Mr. Jen Rylander, Head of Division, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. So not making any further ado, it's over to Mr. Jen. Thank you.
Yes. I hear myself. Very good.
Well, yeah.
Let's get started.
Okay.
I'm sure all of you will be online by the time I get to you with questions. It's a great pleasure to be here. and thank you all for joining us this morning. We've already had an introduction of our speakers, but I believe we are onto a really crucial topic today that I just want to highlight a little bit more to also help us frame the discussion today. We have the Bay on Fire. Climate change is the new security crisis, and I think climate change really has a challenge for so many impacts on us in terms of people's lives and the economy and also security, and very much looking forward to discussing this with all of you. We have seen that climate change has many impacts in our region. In just 2024, we had a lot of flood events in Bangladesh. Just this August, August of 2024, floods affected 5.8 million people and destroyed 339,000 hectares of crops. Food security for millions of people was impacted. In Pakistan, there were monsoon floods that killed over 300 people, and of course in 2022, we all remember the devastating floods in Pakistan, where 33 million people were affected. And last year in India's Assam state, over 2.4 million people faced flooding, and more than 100 people died. And these are not just projections. This is what's actually just been happening these last years. And so it's an issue we really need to grapple with and we need to face. And when we do look at projections, we see that all projections point to the fact that this will become even more intense, that disasters will become more frequent, and that the damage impacts of these disasters will continue to increase. So it is a massive challenge that we all have to address together. And we have conversations at the global level. The COP just concluded in Brazil just last week, where the global community is trying to do something about reducing the pace of global temperature increases and global warming. But at the very same time, locally and in the region, what can we do for adaptation? How can we live with this changing climate and these changing climate impacts? And I want to start with Dr. Azim Ali Shah. You've been introduced, but I just wanted to highlight that you've spent over 20 years in research and development, 14 years with the International Water Management Institute, and you have you're the lead editor of Afghanistan and Pakistan Shared Waters, so you really know a lot about water and a lot about water in this region. And Azim, you've spent so many years working on the Indus Basin shared between Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, and China. And drawing from that experience, what parallels do you see to the water challenges here in the Bay of Bengal? And more broadly, what should we understand about how climate change is reshaping transboundary water dynamics?
Thank you very much. Am I audible, Claire? Okay, perfect. I'm very glad to be here at the CGS BOBC this year. And I think, let me start, climate change is resulting in a lot of these security-related crises. It's linked to the water security in case of Pakistan, or I would say larger South Asian countries. It's resulting into food security issues. It's resulting into energy security issues. And once that becomes a security problem, it's a survival issue. The challenge we have in our case is we primarily depend on 80% of the flows on the transboundary rivers. So Indus is, as a whole, it's a large system of rivers, and it is governed by a treaty between India and Pakistan. And that treaty was signed in 1960, whereby the western rivers were given to Pakistan, eastern rivers went for the complete control in India. And there were certain replacement works that were carried out in order to cope with the waters that we used to receive from the eastern rivers. There was no discussion of climate or ecological flows during the signing of the treaty, and it has not been revisited. And there is no sunset clause as such, as you can see in case of this Ganges treaty that Bangladesh have with India. basically, sort of revise and you renegotiate. But in our case, there is no sunset clause, and it is considered on both sides as a sacrosanct document, which again poses new challenges, new issues that, if you are to renegotiate or, you want to talk about, for instance, the climate change issues, you want to talk about the ecological flows, there was no mention of the groundwater. So a lot of development in this region has happened based on the usage of groundwater. So that is also absent. So considering all of this, climate change is posing a lot of uncertainty in the flows of the rivers of the Indus system. And because of those uncertainty, in my sort of experience of working in this domain, we saw a massive flood in 2010. And it was considered 1 in 100 years, and we were not expecting a similar size of the flood in the near future. But as you mentioned in your opening remarks, in 2022, we witnessed a rather bigger flood. And that impacted around 33 million people, $30 billion of losses. And the pattern of the flood has also changed. In 2010, we saw a major flood in Indus. In 2022, it wasn't Indus. It was basically flash flooding in majority of the areas, and the major impact was in the sort of coastal regions of Sindh and Balochistan. In 2025, this year, again, the pattern changed. And this year, we saw the major devastation happening in the eastern rivers, which is like Chenab. Chenab was one of the western rivers, but mainly Satluj and Ravi. Which did not see any flow in the past, at least my lifetime. We have not seen any water there. So this time we received a lot of water. And if you put it in a geopolitical context, the kind of engagement we are having with our neighbors, there was treaty abeyance or abrogation by India this year in early part, and they said that we'll stop water coming to Pakistan. But again, it's just nature. We received the most amount of water in the eastern rivers this year. So in the geopolitical context, if you also see, there was an engineering solution to the shared waters that we used to have before the partition. But that has not really been the optimal solution, I would say. We don't have any arrangement with Afghanistan, but we share large rivers with Afghanistan as well. For instance, we have Kabul River, which is a tributary to Indus. We have Gomal, Kurram, the book you mentioned, that was specifically on all these rivers. So what I see moving forward, keeping in view climate change as one of the major sort of threat to the livelihood of millions of people surviving on those waters, is to have some sort of sharing the resource or sharing the benefit type of approach. And that's what I've also advocated in the book, that the engineering solutions to the division of the resource have not really sort of benefited in the longer run. If you are to address challenges related to, for instance, climate change, if you are to address challenges related to food security or energy security, there has to be dialogue. Whether that's possible in the current geopolitical context, that's questionable. But the severity, the intensity is definitely increasing, and it is directly impacting the communities. And the other perspective that I really want to bring in here is it's Pakistan, India, the South Asia region. We are part of the third pole in the world. So we are home to largest glaciers in the world. The projections that we have done through the modeling and the forecasts that are available, it is very clear that the glacier melt is increasing, and it would continue to increase like 30 to 40% till 2050. And what that means is there would be huge intensity increase in terms of the surface water that we receive. But then what happens after that? Obviously, there would be decrease in the flows. So the way population is growing, the per capita water availability is really shrinking. If you see the historical flows, I would say it has been pretty much consistent. It changes obviously year to year, but the major dent that has happened in terms of the availability is due to the population increase. And we are considered as a water scarce country. Per capita water availability is less than 1,000 cubic meter per capita. So the solution that I see is more towards improving the governance of the natural resource that we have, rather than, again, investing in engineering solutions. Although, the storages are important, but we have seen huge disaster, and we were discussing in the panel before this session that the water that is essential to flow towards the delta areas is not anymore there. So what that is resulting in, it's resulting in the loss of biodiversity. It's resulting in the seawater intrusion in the delta areas, and a lot of livelihood that used to depend in those coastal communities is also being impacted. So moving forward, I think it's very important that there has to be more conversation on the sharing of the resource between these neighboring countries, and chart out a way forward really to deal with the threats of climate change, which are collective sort of threat. It's not individual countries' domain, and the responsibility also rests on the rest of the developed countries to make sure the commitments that they've made under the COP28 Loss and Damage Fund, they has to be materialized.
Azim, thank you. Thank you very much for your great explanation. And I also detect there's some positives despite all the challenges, because you're saying the challenges are so important and become so destructive and complex that there needs to be much more dialogue across these water basins, more cross-boundary dialogue for every party to the basin to be able to manage this. And so maybe this can actually be an impetus for more collaboration at some point. And you also highlight that we have a challenge of intensity of flows at certain points is going up, but the overall flow levels of water are decreasing. So you have this, and I think we just spoke about this earlier, you have situations of having too much water where you don't need it, and then not enough water when you actually need it. And that this is a pattern that's actually also intensifying, and something that we will want to discuss further. I want to come now to Major General Dr. Munir Islam Akan. Munir, you bring a unique dual perspective. You're a managing director of Summit Power Limited, engaged in energy. You're the director of an important independent power producer in Bangladesh. And at the same time, you have served 36 years in the Bangladesh Army, including in UN peacekeeping missions in Bosnia and Liberia. And you've also been a strategic analyst at US CENTCOM. So you bring many different perspectives together, and it'll be very interesting for us to hear from you, because you bridge both the energy, climate, and security sectors. And from your strategic experience, how do you see water security connecting to energy security and the broader regional stability? And what are the security dimensions that maybe some other people are missing? And what are some of the dimensions around the challenges of climate change for Bangladesh that you see that we really must focus on?
Thank you very much. Am I audible at the back?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay. First of all, I'm extremely honored to be invited here. I'm truly dwarfed by the level of intellectuals that have concentrated for this discussion. As Ian said, that I am the managing director of the largest independent power producer of Bangladesh, Summit Power Limited. But before that, I served in Bangladesh Army for 36 years, where I have deployed in numerous occasions following a disaster. So I have a deep understanding of the impact of natural disasters that we frequently face in Bangladesh. I've deployed home and abroad, and I'm having a fairly clear idea about energy. I'm still going through a very sharp learning curve. To start with, Bangladesh is unfortunately very vulnerable, susceptible to frequent natural disasters, mostly related to water. As Ian said, we don't have water when we need it, and again, we have too much when we don't need it. Water is a blessing and a curse both for Bangladesh. It creates devastation. Again, it revitalizes our land where we can grow 3 to 4 crops a year. I was doing a research. Out of the 100 most devastating natural disasters in recorded human history in terms of loss of life, 8 of them happened in Bangladesh, a country that you can barely see if you're not paying attention in the global map. The Bhola cyclone took away 300 to 500,000 lives. The Baghergon cyclone in late 19th century, we lost 300,000 people. I witnessed the 1991 cyclone where more than 139,000 people perished. One single tornado in 1989 took away more than 1,300 lives, which is a world record. Besides cyclones, we have frequent floods. Millions and millions of people are affected every year. In 1987-88, we had floods which affected 73 million people. And it is mostly because our river beds are rising because of the dams that was created by our neighbors upstream. Sea level rise is a big threat to Bangladesh. The average sea level rise in Bangladesh in last 7 years was 3.62 millimeter per year, which is above the average global rise of 3.4 millimeters. Research predicts that by 2050, 17% of Bangladesh will be gone to Bay of Bengal, and that too without any conversation. And with it, 29% of our agricultural lands will go. We have river erosion, we have salinity, we have arsenic, we have all the disasters that you can think about. We are sitting over 3 major tectonic plates. It's a ticking time bomb. I think you have felt the tremors in the last few days. One building of 8-storied height named Rana Plaza collapsed a decade back, and 37,000 people were deployed for rescue and evacuation. Still, 2,000 people died. We can't imagine the devastation in terms of loss of life and property that will happen in case we face a major tremor. So as a well-wisher, foreigners, please keep your luggage ready. Leave Bangladesh as soon as possible. Do not look back and participate online next year. I'm just joking. We have survived all the natural disasters. We will survive in the future. We are a resilient race, and inshallah, we will prevail. The globe is a closed hydrological system. The amount of water is constant. Unfortunately, we have only access to 0.26% of the water available. More than 97% are salt water, and more than 2% are locked in the solar ice caps. We have 1.1 billion people who suffer from malnutrition, and then again there are 1.1 billion people who are obese. So also in water, it's just a matter of distribution and proper sharing. In the last 50 years, there had been incidents, 1,831 incidents of cooperation and conflict on water. And unfortunately, 7 resulted in violence, and another 507 resulted in conflict. There are 260 transboundary rivers in the globe, 260, and out of which 57 are located in Bangladesh, which comes in from our neighbors. So that is how important water sharing is to Bangladesh. We have consistently been deprived of the essential water that we need, despite having treaties as a lower riparian state. I just want to briefly talk a few words about the teaching of Islam on water sharing. In Holy Book, Quran and Hadith, there are specific policies mentioned regarding the share of water. Hadith, Quran says, as I quote, God and the people are the owner of water sources. It advocates to ensure fair share and to consider downstream users. And a specific priority has been given on use of water. Number one, it is human consumption, number one priority. Number two is animal consumption. Then comes agriculture, then industry and business, and fourth, recreation. I cannot imagine the amount of water that is being used for recreation, where 2.2 billion people globally are water starved. In Quran it is said, Allah and His Prophet command Muslims to avoid wasting water and avoid its excessive use, even if it were of abundant. Use water in a way that succeeding generations are able to meet their needs. Water management and water reforms are always political, and it has to be solved politically. Water issues goes beyond material, moral, and spiritual blessings. Wars in this century will definitely be about water, not only between nations, but between even states and provinces within a nation. I'll talk a few words about energy because I'm leading. As I said, Summit Power Limited, we produce 8.5% of the total energy that is generated for a country of 200 million people. Summit has brought in $1.4 billion of foreign direct investment in the last decade, and we have invested all the money in constructing state-of-the-art power plants across the nation. We have a FSRU, floating storage regasification unit, and we produce 500 million standard cubic feet of natural gas per day, which is 50% of the total imported natural gas in Bangladesh. Including Summit, independent power producers produce 48% of the total energy in Bangladesh. So independent power producers have played a significant role in the development of this nation by generating power. Now, our only customer is the government. And as per the power purchase agreement, the government is supposed to pay us within 30 days. Otherwise, they don't have the right to dispatch or generation. As on today, Summit has a receivable of $150 million. Although this interim government is trying their best to make the payment, but still it is 4 to 5 months delay. But despite having the authority to stop generating, IPPs have continuously produced power because we don't want this nation and its business and its industry and the people to suffer. The second FSRU was awarded to Summit in March 2024, and it was cancelled in November 24, 6 months after the agreement. And as per the agreement, the government can only cancel it within 30 days. And the causes were very weak. They said that the guarantee payment was made 2 days late. It was supposed to be on a Friday, so we have paid on the next working day on Sunday. And the second cause was the guarantee payment was made not by Summit LNG, but Summit Power International, which is the mother company of Summit LNG. So it is very unfortunate, despite the contribution of IPPs and the energy sector that IPPs have done, suddenly after the August regime change, we have become a villain without proper understanding. There is a false myth that we have overcapacity. The current capacity of energy in Bangladesh is 28,000 megawatt, which is overrated. Maybe it will be 27,000. And the peak demand is 18 to 19,000 megawatt. And this capacity is barely enough to meet that requirement because many power plants remains off the grid because of maintenance, which take time and which is very important. There are disruption of fuel supply because of the typhoon in the Pacific. A shipment of HFO arrived 11 days late and we could not produce power. There are low pressure gas and there are many other reasons. And prediction says that by 2030, the energy requirement of Bangladesh will be 37 to 38,000 megawatt, which is far more than the capacity that we have. So we really need a policy immediately and to be able to meet the future demands because energy is related to development. Unfortunately, out of all the energy that is produced in Bangladesh, only 1% is renewable energy. The government has taken a brave plan to increase the amount to 20% by 2030. But I think for a country like Bangladesh, it is too ambitious a plan and it is not practical. If we talk about solar energy, Bangladesh remains overcast 4 to 5 months a year. We don't have enough sunshine. It requires 2 to 3 acres of land to produce 1 megawatt of solar energy. I have a plant in Gazipur which produces 449 megawatt, and the land that we use is 25.5 acres of land only. To produce that amount of energy, you will need almost 1,400 acres of land. Now, Bangladesh have only 130,000 kilometers of land and 200 million people to live. Can we afford to sacrifice agricultural land for solar energy where we can barely feed our people? So the solution is in regional cooperation. Nepal and Bhutan has excess potential hydro energy, 43,000 megawatt and 30,000 megawatt respectively. So we can import hydro electricity from Nepal and Bhutan. We can import solar energy from India, from the deserts of India. And I don't understand, unfortunately, Bangladesh and India spends billions of dollars on border protection. Why such suspicion against each other? Why we cannot grow together? Why we cannot have a relationship of mutual benefit? History says that we have never been able to stop migration. When agriculture was the indicator of GDP, this subcontinent had 25% of the global GDP. People from Middle East and Europe flocked into our neighborhood in search of a better life. Now we go to Middle East, we go to Europe. That is how the world runs. So I think we should stop investing on things that are not important, increase regional cooperation, increase connectivity between us and our neighbors. I have a few broad recommendations at the end. I hope I am not taking too much of time. Number one, regional peace leading to export and import of renewable energy within neighbors, very important. Long-term comprehensive energy policy incorporating climate risk maps, resilient infrastructure, and contingency strategies. Increase energy capacity to meet the needs of the future. Invest in distributed renewable such as rooftop solar, microgrid, and battery storage to keep critical services running during natural disasters and grid failure. Encourage foreign direct investment, very important, and of course support independent power producers by keeping promises and commitment rather than blaming. And finally, resolve water sharing issues before it goes out of control. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Munir, thank you very much for your great contribution, and you've really covered key issues around climate. You've focused on water and this conversation we have also with Azim and all the really devastating experiences that Bangladesh has had, that many of the other countries in the region have had, and the challenge to deal with it. And then you've also focused on energy. And energy, usually when we talk about climate, energy is about how do we avoid more CO2 emissions, whereas water is how do we deal with the effects of climate change. So it's very good that we can talk about the two sides. How can we do something about reducing global warming, and at the same time, how can we come together to deal with the impacts of climate? So I thought that was great, and I found nice the same point that Azim made, that at the end of the day, the challenges, they are so pressing that collaboration between neighboring countries is really the only way forward. There isn't really an option for everybody to try to do their own thing. But as a security-minded person, you know that very often this will be at loggerheads with the idea of energy security. Every country wants to make sure that if there's a crisis, if something goes wrong, I can take care of myself, which means that I need to be able to produce all the energy I have. I need to be able to manage all my water alone. But at the same time, we're in a global situation and a local situation where that is not really feasible and possible. So I think this is really something to figure out together. And another aspect that you highlight is going from today 8,500 megawatts capacity to 34,000 projected. So clearly the question is, how will we build this out? And I think we all see this, the biggest challenge today in climate mitigation. All the conversations at the COP are around countries like Bangladesh that have a strong economic dynamic that need to really expand their power production. What types of power production will be built? And can this be renewable, or will this be burning emissions, essentially? And so I think these are some key issues that you've brought together, and I think that we can deepen further in our conversation. So thank you very much for your contribution. I now want to go to Shafkat Munir, Shafkat, you're a senior research fellow at the Bangladesh Institute of Peace and Security Studies. You're heading the Bangladesh Center for Terrorism Research. You're also a senior fellow at the Institute of National Security Studies in Sri Lanka, and you were formerly with the South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. Your expertise spans counterterrorism, Indo-Pacific security, and military history. So you really know a lot about security issues, and I think from already the two contributions we've heard, this is clear that the links are strong and that there's a lot of reflections, and that sometimes the security reflection will help find a solution, and sometimes it might actually stand in the way of a more collaborative solution, as we've just seen. So it would be great to hear from you at this intersection of climate and security research. You know, what are the specific implications that you see emerging in Bangladesh? What do you see as the military's role? What are the unique capabilities that armed forces bring to the crisis? And how can we find a solution to use the security imperative to create more collaboration rather than block it?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it's wonderful that we have a panel on climate security, because too often in the international security discourse, climate change is seen only from the prism of adaptation, mitigation, and from an environmental issue, but there is a significant security dimension to what we talk about, what we now call security implications of climate change. And I don't think we could have chosen a better venue to talk about climate change than Bangladesh, because when you live in Bangladesh, when you live in a place which is possibly facing inundation of nearly 17% of its landmass by 2050, there is no option to be a climate denier or to deny the implications of climate change. So it is very pertinent that we are having this conversation here. When we talk about security implications of climate change, I think we often focus on food security, we focus on migration, we focus on energy security, we focus on loss of livelihood. But increasingly, research shows that there is also a geopolitical and geostrategic dimension to climate security as well. Now imagine if we took the case of South Asia. We are already living in a place which is deeply constrained by, in terms of resources, in terms of landmass, and a very large body of people are living within a very small area of land, especially Bangladesh, but also other countries as well. So when climate change really hits with full gusto, and we lose a significant amount of landmass, and people start moving towards higher ground, given the kind of geopolitical and geostrategic tensions that we already have in this region, what will the scenario look like? I only shudder to think. But let us look at some of the various aspects of security challenges that this country and this region faces. For example, food and water insecurity, changes in rainfall patterns, including prolonged drought in agrarian regions, and increased saline intrusion into freshwater resources and agricultural land threaten food production and water availability, especially for rice-growing areas. Now, when you have nearly 200 million people inhabiting a land which is only 140,000 plus square kilometers, when a slight degree of food insecurity plagues the system, it becomes a crisis. We also have destabilization of what I call strategic assets. We are looking at a scenario where natural disasters could potentially cause damage to ports, airfield, naval bases along the coast, and they're increasingly vulnerable to disruption from sea level rise and extreme weather events. Extreme weather events, ladies and gentlemen, are increasing with a rapidity that we have never seen before. Just over the last 70 to 96 hours, we have experienced several tremors and quakes in Bangladesh, including a 5.7 magnitude Richter scale earthquake which just hit Bangladesh two days ago. And since 1880, and I want to underscore this point, since 1880, we have never experienced an earthquake of this size which emanates within the Dhaka region. So the previous speaker has very adroitly spoken about the kind of damage a massive earthquake can cause. And just in today's newspaper, there is analysis in the largest Bangla newspaper, Prothom Alo, that how ill-prepared Bangladesh is to meet a major earthquake. Apart from earthquake, we are looking at an increase in the number of all kinds of other natural disasters, including cyclones, floods, and so on, which already puts a strain on a constrained system that we have to deal with natural disasters. And again, I have to come back to the point that we are an extremely large population inhabiting a small landmass. Climate change is definitely going to exacerbate existing geopolitical tensions. As countries fight over resources, with more resource constraint emerging, with more disasters emerging, with land being lost to the sea, this will heighten, exacerbate, and complicate existing geopolitical tensions. It will also exacerbate geopolitical tensions in the maritime domain, as maritime resources are also lost to the sea due to climate change. It will also increasingly put a strain on national governance, as frequent large-scale disaster place immense stress on national governance and disaster relief mechanisms, diverting resources and potentially leading to political instability. There are already several case studies where climate-induced droughts and other incidents have caused instability in the Middle East, and we are increasingly seeing that in other parts of the world. The region's crucial fisheries in the Bay of Bengal, shipping lanes, and energy prospects are also jeopardized by warming sea surface temperatures, ocean acidification, marine pollution, and extreme weather threatening coastal livelihoods. There is also reduced community resilience. The recurring cycle of disasters, land loss, and livelihood disruption erodes the overall resilience of displaced and vulnerable communities, making them more susceptible to human insecurity and exploitation. So in a complex milieu like this, unless as the international community, we are prepared to address the security implications of climate change, and again, going back to the chair's point about collective action, we will never really be able to reach a solution. So it is not enough for Bangladesh alone to do things, and Bangladesh is a frontline state of climate change. It is facing the brunt of climate change in a very big way. We have done quite a bit in terms of adaptation, mitigation, but how we counter these security implications will require a lot of collective action. For instance, if we lose large part of our landmass to the sea, particularly in the south and southwest, and there is a need for people to migrate to higher ground, where will they go to? These questions need to be asked. We cannot shy away from looking at security implications of climate change when we plan for mitigating or adapting to climate change. Now I come to the second part of my discussion or remarks, which is about the role of the military. Historically, the military has perhaps played the most crucial role in the case of Bangladesh when it comes to humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery. So we now have to look at how the military can play a very significant role in dealing with many of the security implications of climate change, not only in terms of HADR, but as an ongoing process. And to that effect, we have to also relook at military education and training, because we have to induct climate change and security implications into the way we train our soldiers and officers, sailors and airmen. We also have to look at how the military can be equipped with the right kind of kit to deal with climate change issues. For instance, if there is an earthquake, and God forbid, if there is a devastating earthquake, the military, in the case of Bangladesh or within the region, even in India, Pakistan, and in other places, will be the first responder. So the time has come for us to ask the question whether they are equipped with the right kind of tools, skill sets to deal with a mega disaster of that nature. Climate change, ladies and gentlemen, is a threat multiplier. There is a big theory in international security discourse now, where climate change is a threat multiplier. Not only it creates threats, but it also exacerbates and compounds other existing threats, like food insecurity and so on. So I think the time has come for us to take it very seriously. The time has come for us to take it very seriously that there are significant security implications emanating from climate change. I have only listed a few. I could go on for hours. But to make sure that we have our militaries, our security sector, even our intelligence agencies prepared to deal with the whole aspect of climate and environmental insecurity. And sitting in Dhaka, sitting in Bangladesh, there is no option for us to deny these challenges because we live through it every day. 14% of our loss of our landmass, I want to bring this number to your attention, could result in the displacement of 25 to 30 million people. Now, may I say that 25 to 30 million people is roughly 50% of the size of population of Germany. That is the kind of loss of displacement we're looking at. So I think we have to be very careful about the way we chart our course to deal with climate insecurity. And we have to delimit what are the roles of various organizations, including the military. And internationally, whether it is COP or other places, we have to mainstream the conversation of climate security. So therefore, I'm very pleased that the BOBC decided to include this session, and we are having a very useful discussion about this very critical issue from a multifaceted angle. I think I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Shafkat, thank you very much for a great contribution and for really highlighting the very special situation also in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is number 10 in the world in terms of population density. And so, of course, any flooding will immediately touch millions of people. And I think you've very nicely highlighted this issue. If you just have 14% of landmass being flooded, 25 to 30 million people will have to be on the move. And then you said if they have to move to higher ground, where would they go? They have to find higher ground, and there's likely already going to be a lot of people there. So really some very crucial points. And I think the other element that you're highlighting in a way is that we all need to learn how to do stress testing. We all need to do scenario planning and thinking much better to understand what will happen in these situations. And you spoke about the first earthquake, and so this is the first earthquake since 1880 in this
Which originated in Dhaka region.
in this area. And I think we all, when we think about resilience, we all have to learn how to think in return years and in the probability statistics around disasters. So 1880 to today, that's like roughly an earthquake that happens once every 150 years. We know about COVID, that's a pandemic that happens once every 100 years. And we learned that these floods that we're experiencing happen once every 25 years. And I think this is type of probability language we all need to work with to understand the complexity of our situation much better. I now want to turn to two speakers who are thinking and working also on some solutions, some very concrete issues. And first, I want to come to Professor Kabir. Professor Kabir, you're the Vice Chancellor of Daffodil International University. You have over 44 years of experience in water resources and climate challenge. You have a PhD in civil engineering from Belgium, and you've spent your life with issues around water and around students. And I think you really have some great ideas on what role can academic institutions play. We certainly all think of academic institutions from the research perspective, but you are the educators of the future generations, and it's the future generations that will have to deal with these challenges to even another degree than we have to today. So what can you tell us about how we can help the next generation solve all of these issues that we're leaving them with?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to such an gathering to talk about the climate change. And the theme is Bay on Fire. And when the speaker was introducing the topic, he mentioned about the politics has become part of the storm because around the bay we are experiencing storm. Now the politics has added to this. And climate change is no longer only an ecological crisis. It has become a slow onset security crisis affecting borders, livelihoods, and even social cohesion. Because of sea level rise, the people will start migrating from the especially southern part of our country. Part of the country will go under sea. So obviously they have to move the upward. At the moment we are thinking about this, but another important thing, because of salinity, the ground will not be anymore good to cultivate our main food, rice. So there will be a shortage of food production. And also, because of climate change, entire country is now facing a lot of disturbance in weather. Sometimes it's too much flood, sometimes it's too less water causing drought. So both extreme values are increasing. So even our crop calendar, I think now time has come to change properly to adjust the climate change. Having said this, presently what we are suffering everywhere in the world, we have seen the COVID-19 that changed our lifestyle, affected our lifestyle. We are transforming many things. Look at the war everywhere, destroying lands everywhere. So how to solve these problems that world is facing now? I think education is the only one that can teach us how to change our lifestyle, how to behave with the world. We got this planet. Now what we are witnessing, that everywhere we have started destroying this planet, whichever we can. But that should not be the way. So education is the only way to convince us not to destroy any further, if not improve it. So I find it very important, the role of the youth, education, and innovation. So as a Vice Chancellor of Dhaka International University, I must emphasize one dimension which is often overlooked. Education is a frontline defense against the climate security nexus. In our place, we are preparing thousands of young people, future policymakers. They are our future. So we have to pay attention to this so that we can build their future nicely. We have innovators, entrepreneurs to understand the response to complex climate changes. In Bangladesh, you'll find all examples of the effect or impact of climate change. We have extreme flood, we have extreme drought, we have sea level rise. So students, they are the young people. So tomorrow they will be our leader. If we can make them understand the entire process, because tomorrow they will be the policymaker. So maybe that will be easier for them to solve the issue. We are doing research on climate-induced migration and community resilience. Innovation labs focusing on renewable energy. At Daffodil International University now very soon will be self-sufficient in energy from the solar. And ultimately, maybe excess energy we may sell to our national grid. So this way, we are doing research, and that may help how to adapt the climate change impact. And regional youth platforms for climate action. So these are the multi-dimensions where we can give input from the academic institution to prepare our young generation. We are building the capacity of young people who will live in, manage, and transform this climate impact region. The future stability of the Bay will depend on whether today's youth are empowered with the skills and awareness needed to navigate a climate unstable world. Education, not peripheral, it is security infrastructure. So this is what we can do in our academic institutions. And if I give an example, in 1987-88, we experienced one of the biggest flood. The entire Dhaka city was under the water. Even our international airport was under water for 17 days. We are disconnected from the rest of the world. But then we took the initiative of building embankment around the Dhaka city. That time, designing, especially fixing the level of the embankment, was not considered the climate change impact. Are we doing now the exercise whether our embankment will last till 2050? is a question mark. Maybe, may not be. So there is a scope for research. If our research institutions, academic institutions, do this research, we can adapt ourselves with the climate change impact. Regional cooperation, I'll finish it with this small paragraph. The climate change does not respect borders, flags, or political differences. Therefore, our responses cannot remain confined within them. You see, the problem is known to all countries in the region. But look at our leadership. Are they good enough to negotiate with our neighbors? So we need a strong leader. We are 200 million people here. We are getting affected due to their act. We are the lower riparian, downstream people. We suffer the most. But why can't we have a regional cooperation? So what we need, shared early warning system. I'm sure in this hall, many of you, or maybe all of you, understand the catchment. So our development should be based on catchment, not the small. In Bangladesh, there is no hydrological catchment, although we define few areas, but as such, natural catchment is not within the Bangladesh. So any development in the catchment, we need to have the cooperation from neighbors. Otherwise, we cannot be successful development-wise. Shared early warning system, joint research on ocean health, coordinated humanitarian responses, and trust-building mechanism between Bay of Bengal countries. If we start talking independently about the Bangladesh policy, that is not going to help the region, then our plan cannot be implemented. So we have to discuss with our neighbors, all the countries that are around the Bay of Bengal, and then we can start seeing how effectively, how usefully we can use this resource. The narrative must shift from competition to cooperation. In the Bay is on fire. The only rational response is to build a regional fire brigade, not separate firewalls. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kabir. I love your last statement. If the region is on fire, we need to build a fire brigade. I think that's an excellent point and kind of underlines a bit one of these themes that we've had throughout the conversation on the need for more collaboration with neighboring countries. I like it how you put forward the importance of education, that it's really helping future generations to live with these problems and help them solve them. And joint research can maybe be a starting point. The importance of the catchment area, and that just by the geography and geology of water, all countries are dependent on each other and therefore need to talk. Now, I want to come to Piru Chong. Last but certainly not least, you will help us to take a bit of a global perspective. I think you've worked on a lot of these issues. Piru Chong is director of the Open Development Initiative. You bring an environmental science background to gender justice work. You've spent many years in nature-based solutions and working with indigenous women's environmental defender networks. You're a recognized expert in open knowledge systems and AI implications for climate justice. And you have degrees from Monash University and Penn State Environmental Sciences and GIS. So you really bring a lot of things together in terms of environmental science, understanding modern technology, but working very concretely, very much on the ground with indigenous communities, with women. And you have argued that many of our green solutions, the just energy transition, green tech, nature-based solutions, even to some extent, that they all still rely on extraction and exploitation. And you even see that also the global processes at work, like the COP, they are not really helping or not really carrying the interests of those most affected, because they are the least powerful, the least influential. Can you unpack this a bit for us. What does that mean for communities on the ground, and how can we make progress at this very practical level where you work?
Hi, thank you for that. I want to position my my discussion around Southeast Asia. That's because that's where I have the most experience, and I see a lot of parallels with what the panelists here have said about the escalating natural disasters and extreme weathers that is creating inequalities in access to resources, food, and energy. And I want to start with an example from the Philippines. Just recently, the Philippines has experienced 2 significant typhoons that's caused extreme weathers that has displaced many villages, most of which are indigenous, who are now stranded and isolated without access to water and housing and energy. And they are extremely upset, of course, because their entire livelihoods, their latest crop for this year has been washed away. And so without an existing crop, they're going to struggle in this next remainder of the year with food insecurities as well. Now, it's come to light that much of the natural disaster in these regions could have been avoided. And they could have been avoided because the investments into flood preventions in the region weren't funded this year. We do not know where the money went to, but there were budgets allocated and plans designated for this area for flood prevention. It didn't occur, which exacerbated the flooding, an area that doesn't usually flood. And so as a result, what we saw over the last few weeks was extreme civil unrest. So communities came to the capital of Manila and protested, had held peaceful protest in the capital to demonstrate against potential corruption issues and the mismanagement of funds that could have been invested into flood prevention. And so this highlights 2 really significant issues. One, that extreme weather is causing significant insecurities for communities and food security, as the panelists have already mentioned. But secondly, the civil unrest that is associated nationally with the potential of climate crises, right? And the lack of response from governments and national governments in preventing this and providing extended services and having those services available in times of crisis and national disaster. And I think these 2 issues nationally are really important to think about when we look at how do we address climate actions. And so it's a very multi-layered issue that not only is associated with the general global climate issues, but also in how we address them at the national level and at the regional level and international level. So in this circumstance, it's a national level issue where there's clearly political will that has hindered the progress in terms of climate adaptation. But if we move from that example of national instance to a regional instance of the Mekong region, which is a transboundary water river, it's one of the longest in Southeast Asia, and its headwaters are in southern China, and it extends through 5 national countries of the Mekong, which is Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam, where it opens up into the delta. This transboundary river is the source of food, water, and energy for nearly 70 million people within the region. And like the professor highlighted, most of the catchment areas of this significant river is based in China, where much of the negotiations up until recently were all separated. So there was no collaboration up until recently about how these 5-6 governments would manage this significant waterway. And yet we saw escalating issues of food insecurities, extreme weather, extreme lack of water resources for agricultural processes, and energy. The river is highly dammed along the Chinese segment and also down in the southern Laos. And we were seeing a shortage of energy for hydropower projects or hydro energy because of the lack of water. And this brings my attention to looking at the transboundary issues not only as a geopolitical issue of negotiations and cooperations, but how we specifically manage our ecosystems. So looking beyond just the water source itself and the river, but also at the greater ecology of watersheds and the infrastructure and the commodity itself and what it provides for the people. And unfortunately, within these negotiations, we are not looking at ecosystem services from a holistic landscape perspective in terms of how we're managing these resources. Secondly, at a transboundary level and politically, there's an extreme pressure to actually comply with a lot of new policies and regulations globally to protect environmental systems, but yet there's extraction, there's a conflict of resource extractions to actually develop. And so you have these two very competing agendas around climate protection, but also development issues. And what you're seeing in both of these spheres is that communities are not engaged in these discussions. And we're seeing this globally at the moment during the COP, where Indigenous communities have protested proactively to demonstrate against the lack of engagement of communities who steward. When we think about Indigenous communities, they steward 80% of our biodiversity resources globally. And yet their voices within these national policy dialogues, regional dialogues, and global dialogues is virtually absent. And so how are we engaging these communities? And are we missing an opportunity here to actually highlight solutions where they have stewarded forest and natural resources over the centuries that could contribute to greater solutions? And so the work that we're doing now is to actually look at how do we address this. So we work specifically with Indigenous communities and looking at Indigenous data sovereignty and knowledge systems to see how we can amplify their voices and their knowledges on how to manage these water systems and environmental systems in more sustainable ways that is equitable and fair. And how do we interject this into dialogues at both national policy level, but also transboundary and international levels? So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Piru. You've brought a great new perspective to the conversation. I think you've highlighted a number of issues that really oscillate also with what we've heard. You've started out with a key challenge that I think everybody has experienced, that investing in prevention is always much more difficult than finding money for cleaning up after the problem. And I think everywhere in the world we're quite familiar with that, especially ever since COVID. And you've even spoken about situations where this has even been budgeted, and in theory everything was fine, and then still it didn't happen. So that's another level where we're speaking about local government level governance issues, possibly corruption, where money has maybe not really found its way. And you're speaking about communities that are very close to the issues. They have a lot of knowledge about nature-based solutions, but they're not really involved, and maybe we could bring them much more in. And I'm wondering, as I was listening to you, I was thinking about Amartya Sen. I think he pointed to the fact that famines don't really happen in well-functioning democracies. So as long as the interest of every citizen is important for the decision makers, the system will find a way how to prevent the worst outcomes, because every vote counts. And I think at the moment we live at a time where a lot of these climate impacts are so devastating and dramatic that it's very difficult to mount a response. But nevertheless, I think over time, it is also clear that political systems need to be capable, because the decision makers, the elites, will usually always be protected from the worst of these effects. But will political systems be capable of really taking care of all their citizens, or will the incentives for the elites not really allow that? And I think that's a challenge that will hit a lot of countries. We all have to figure that out. I see we have about 10 minutes left. I'm sure there's a lot of questions in the audience. I just wanted to have one question. It's okay, Azim, you've spent a lot of time in these water and collaboration issues, and we've spoken a lot about the need for transboundary collaboration with neighboring countries, finding partnership. Do you have an insight to what extent is this a technical issue? How can we solve this at the technical level? And to what extent is it a political issue, with the latter, of course, being a bit more difficult than the former? But what's your perspective from you having really been a technician and being in many of these themes? What do you think are some of the key things to take forward to get more collaboration?
So see, in terms of the mechanics, often, the sharing of the water resources or the division of the water resources is left to engineers. And engineers are good in typically devising technical solutions. What we've seen in case of India and Pakistan, Indus Water Treaty was negotiated, which was primarily agreement arbitrated by the World Bank, but it was a technical solution of a division of the resource. That has proved to be successful in the last 60 plus years. But the thing is, a lot of the ecological issues that have arisen after the treaty were overlooked. And in terms of, addressing those issues, you got to have political will. And, any new agreement, if that's premised on the sharing of the resource, that requires a rather bigger political will. For instance, in case of Pakistan and Afghanistan, we are thinking of having some sort of arrangement of water sharing on the shared rivers between the two countries. There are two options available. Either we follow the Indus Water Treaty or we devise a sharing of the resource. And thereby, this has other options also. Along with not only water sharing, you can share the energy resources. You can invest in the neighboring country for, let's say, reservoir construction, and you can purchase electricity. So there are benefits, and we've seen those benefits in case of many other river basins. For instance, Southern Africa, South Africa invested in Lesotho, and they are sort of trading energy supply for the city of Joburg. So there are options available. I think the more successful options that we have seen across the world have been where the countries have pooled resources, and they have tried to ensure that the different sectors that benefit from the sharing of the resources are included in the discussions. But whereby there are engineering solutions, their long-term sustainability is a bit questionable. It's a challenge also, and in case of climate change, we have seen these were not considered in the discussions a few decades ago, but that's a pertinent threat that we are now witnessing. So moving forward, I still believe there has to be more dialogue, there has to be more political intent, and then it should not be taken as a sort of issue which is related to only one country. It is a sort of joint issue. We got to invest jointly. And the forums like Mekong River Commission, for instance, the Southeast Asian countries, and in the Europe also there is very good cooperation on the Rhine or these rivers. So similar we have to sort out in case of South Asia. Another platform that we are missing altogether is the SARC platform, which was functional a decade ago, I would say, but in the last 10 years we have seen the total depletion of this forum. So we have to revive some of these forums for these discussions, which would benefit all the neighboring countries.
Thank you, Azim. So let's hope that the engineers will bring us forward and help us to collaborate. I'm sure there are some questions in the audience. Yes, please, the gentleman here, and yeah, come to the mic, and if you have the question for somebody, let us know or take it into the room.
Thank you. Greetings. Myself, Bong Thoi Gyomarang. My question is to actually Azim sir. We all know that there are a lot of organizations, protocols, convention on the matter of environment and climate change, but unfortunately, most of them are ineffective? What are the reasons of their ineffectiveness? And my additional question is that most of the developed countries are responsible for climate change, but they don't compensate the victim countries. For example, we can say that current US President Donald Trump, in his first term, he withdrawn the membership of Paris Agreement in 2016. And he called COP Summit as a picnic of particular parties. How we can pressure to the developed countries to pay compensation to the victim countries? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take a few questions to take care of the time. So Azim, please remember the point directed to you. You're ready at the mic, and then maybe if you could just stand up behind the mic, if you can make a little queue so that we can manage. And we'll take 3 questions and then get a round of answers. Please.
Hello, good morning everyone. This is Rihanna Islam. I work in BRAC Institute of Governance and Development. So I will have a general question, anyone can answer this. I will bring one specific security crisis here, that is job security and loss of skill issues. We see climate change make some people with special skills lose their livelihood and forced to maybe even displaced from rural area to urban area within a country, maybe in Bangladesh as well. So we see when people who work in farming, fishermen, honey collector, etc., they are forced to adapt different type of jobs like rickshaw pulling, car mechanic, or maybe shopkeeping. So in my research, I'm a researcher. In my research, I have seen that when people of Bangladesh get internally displaced from rural to urban areas, they are more prone to engage in modern slavery, like human trafficking and forced labor, contractless job, non-negotiable jobs, non-negotiable salary, etc. So my question is how to prevent this loss of skills immediately. I know we can make some policies, but I think we can't hold few generations for making policies, and policy making takes time. We can't just waste few generations over urban areas and keep them engaging into rickshaw pulling or shopkeeping and expect that whenever we will make some good policies, their future generation can get back to rural areas and perform the same level of skills work like their ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A very good question, a new angle, and the importance of internal displacement, what happens to skills, and how can people find their feet in an economically challenging situation. Next question.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sabiha Firdaus Mithila. My question is to Moniul Islam sir. As you mentioned about the sea level rise and other natural disaster, and a result, Bangladesh will face a lot of challenges and tragedies. Could you please suggest something for this country to take as precaution to face the consequences of the disaster, other than packing bag and leaving Bangladesh?
Thank you. And well, I'll take this last question, and then we come here to
Hello,
the answer.
everyone. This is Tamim Abdullah. I am from Jahangirnagar University. Well, I have a question on Rohingya dimension from Bangladeshi perspective. According to NASA data center, the Rohingya refugee camp in Cox's Bazar are extremely exposed to landslide, flash flood, and cyclones. So my question is to the entire panel or anyone who would like to answer that how our regional collaborators can help us in this situation or share the burden of Rohingya refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me. Okay, we have some more questions. So now I'll have to stop it here, otherwise we forget all the good questions. And Munir, one question was directly addressed to you, so I'll let you come in first.
Okay. Sea level rise is a challenge, and we have other disasters that happens in very frequent intervals. But I must say one thing, that the previous governments have taken certain steps which has reduced destruction and death significantly. The construction of cyclone centers and particularly improvement of the warning system because people were not aware that a cyclone is heading. A similar strength cyclone happened in 2004 called Cyclone Cedar, which was equally as strong as Cyclone Bhola, where the death toll was 5,000 compared to 500,000 back in 1970, because people were informed of an incoming cyclone and there were places where people could take shelter. So the change in climate is inevitable, it's happening, we can't deny it. All we can do is prepare. And I must say, Shafkat and the moderator has mentioned, Bangladesh Army, Armed Forces are the most well-equipped organization to manage disasters. We have the best equipment, we have the finest training, and in so many occasions I had the pride to stand beside the affected, handing over medicine to the sick, food to the hungry, evacuating people who are injured. And it was a daily routine for me. I left my family, my children home and deployed for months together. So this is the pride that Bangladesh Armed Forces take. But it is a global responsibility. Everybody has to take responsibility. All the organs of the government has to work effectively, and there has to be a massive coordination in handling disaster of such magnitude. Deploying the armed forces for operations other than war is not good. We are meant to defend the nation, and this impacts our state of training. Army is not meant or built to fight war, but to prevent war. And we have to dedicate our time in the training which is necessary. But of course, we are available. We always stand beside the people. And I think Armed Forces, history says, that has played a significant role in this disaster. I must say few words about Rohingyas. I was involved during the Rohingya influx in 2017. And I was also a member of the national team for Rohingya repatriation. And I participated in 5 negotiations with my Myanmar counterpart, 3 in Naypyidaw and 2 in Dhaka. And from the beginning, I was telling that they will never be taken back by the Myanmar government. We allowed them to come in, and you can't stop human migration. And I have talked to individuals, Rohingyas, who said that this is the 3rd, 4th time I'm coming to Bangladesh. Every time I lose some family members and I come back again. This time I'll not leave, I'll die here. I have been to Rakhine. I was taken there by the Myanmar authority, and the lands it was a very productive state where Rohingyas wished to cultivate and grow crops. So I was advocating that we should utilize this 1.1 million Rohingyas, which is more than the population of 50 countries in the world. They're sitting idle, eating and getting involved in all sorts of crimes like arms trafficking, drug trafficking. So let us train them. Let us use this manpower. Manpower is the most valuable asset in this current situation. Let us use them and help them to build Bangladesh. Let us accept whatever has happened. And if you have been there, you will be amazed to see the standard of life that these people are living there. And within these 6-7 years, they have grown by 100,000 more. They are highly productive. So rather than either we take a direct action to send them back or accommodate them, adjust them within our community, train them and try to utilize them. Thank you.
Thank you, Moni. I'm getting increasingly desperate signs from the organizer that we have to come to an end of this panel. So maybe just Piero, just to you, this last question, I don't know, on the skills challenge, you've worked with local communities. If you have maybe some reflections on that, and then we'll close off with that.
I actually just want to make 2.
If you can,
Hello?
Yeah.
I want to make two points. Firstly, on the loss and damages, that COP. Everyone touted that as a significant progress towards mitigating the imbalances of climate, those that contribute to climate change and those who are affecting the changes. They have not met their pledges, targets at the moment. They are increasing over time, but it's very laborious a task to access those funds. And so that still remains a real key challenge for many underdeveloped nations in accessing those finances. In terms of skills, internally displaced persons as a result of climate change is very complex on a certain level as well. But what we see is when displaced communities are forcefully displaced due to climate actions, they want to return to their lands. in most circumstances they want to, but there are a whole array of other social factors that are pressuring them in terms of their way of practicing and of cultivating lands and actually protecting their lands. And what's happening is this shift in dynamics on the influences of development and other technologies into how we cultivate our lands and produce foods is also displacing knowledge systems from these local communities. And therefore, a previous generation where we would teach generations of farmers or fishers how to traditionally practice conservation in those areas is disappearing. And as a result, we do have an apathy or a lack of skills transfer of these traditional knowledge systems and practices to the next generation. And so it's much more appealing for young people to leave when times are tough. And I think this is something that goes back into the broader discussions of how are we looking at addressing climate issues in terms of microclimate issues, and then that interconnects with the way the global society is influencing pressures on alternative models of climate solutions that don't necessarily match contextual context at the local level. And so we need to rethink these processes and how we can balance these to ensure that there are continued populations that want to steward traditional practices forward that also have the added benefit of protecting our climates.
Thank you, Piero. I want to thank all of the speakers for a wonderful discussion. I think we're facing dramatic challenges that imply devastation, damages, death for many people, and we all have to find a way how to come together. And I think what was very clear is that collaboration between countries, between neighbors, is really the only way forward, because nobody can really manage this on their own. Also, it was very clear, Professor Kabir, you've brought the importance of the next generation education. We need to also hand over the problems and as much as we can about the solutions to the next generation. And I think even also in this last round, a strong plea for activating people as much as we can, whether it's the Rohingyas or whether it's people that are displaced, trying to keep their skills and to find them a place to be productive. So I think these are some of the takeaways on this challenging issue of climate change in the Bay of Bengal. And I want to thank you all for your participation and for my speakers for this wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you to all the speakers. Requesting all the panelists to come for a group photo, please.
Hello. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Toufatul Rabbi Pial. I work as a researcher in Center for Governance Studies, CGS, and I welcome all of you to this session titled as From Growth to Fairness, Reimagining Prosperity After the Great Inequality. Before I go any further, let me just inform you there is another session going parallelly. So if you have the interest, you can participate there as well. So as far as our title is concerned, we often see the world actually worshipped the growth as progress, as if the numbers could measure the well-being of a human being. But that illusion has already been cracked, considering different issues like pandemic, death crisis. The cost of living shocks have revealed a deeper level of poverty hidden beneath the prosperity. And nowadays, inequality is no longer a social issue. Rather, it is considered to be a structural wound shaping politics, anger, and the faith in the future. So, for discussing on this critical framework of thoughts, we have a number of eminent ambassadors representing different countries. So not making any further ado, let me introduce. First of all, we have the privilege to have Mr. Park Yang-sik, Ambassador, Embassy of the Republic of Korea in Bangladesh. We have the honor to have Mr. Lalzim Plana, Ambassador, Republic of Kosovo, working in Bangladesh. Then we are honored to have the company of Mr. Rudiger Lords, Ambassador, German Embassy, Bangladesh. Then we are privileged to have Mr. James Goldman, Deputy High Commissioner and Development Director, British High Commission, Bangladesh. Last but not the least, we have Ms. Susan Ryle, Her Excellency, Australia's High Commissioner, working in Bangladesh. And to conduct the whole session, we have the privilege to have Mr. Zillur Rahman as a moderator, who is serving as the chair of Bay of Bengal Conversation 2025. So, not making any further ado, over to you, Mr. Zillur Rahman, as a moderator to operate the session. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This session, From Growth to Fairness, Reimagining Prosperity After the Great Inequality, asks us to confront an uncomfortable truth. For far too long, we measured progress only through growth. We assumed that rising numbers meant rising well-being. Yet the last decade, marked by pandemics, data stress, inflation, and geopolitical disruption, has shown us how fragile that assumption was. Beneath prosperity, inequity has widened. Beneath stability, frustration has grown. Today, the Indian Ocean region is becoming one of the world's most consequential arenas of both competition and cooperation. New trade routes, energy corridors, and technological networks promise enormous opportunity. But unless fairness and inclusion are at the heart of these transformations, we risk reproducing the very inequalities that are destabilizing societies across the globe. This session brings together leaders who represent countries deeply invested in the region's future. Their perspective will help us think not only about how to generate prosperity, but how to distribute it, sustain it, and anchor it in justice. It is my honor to serve as moderator. Our format today is simple. Each ambassador will take the podium to deliver their remarks. There will be no question and answer, but their speeches will collectively frame the future we must imagine. One where fairness is not a byproduct of growth, but its foundation. With that, let us begin. Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker represents a nation whose development journey has become a global benchmark for inclusive growth. Korea's foreign policy increasingly emphasizes shared prosperity, technological cooperation, and equitable development, principles reflected in its Indo-Pacific strategy, which calls for a free, peaceful, and prosperous region. It is my honor to invite His Excellency Park Young-sik, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Bangladesh, to deliver his remarks. Mr. Ambassador.
Assalamu alaikum. Today, I'm trying to make a presentation. I'm trying to say it in verbally, but in order to make it clear the delivery, I prepare for the slides. So it is very honor to speak here. This is very good opportunity for me to look at and then sharing our view about the ladder of opportunities. This is my, next. So, previous, okay, next time. Please. This is Korea, the history. Last dynasty, I'm only talking about last dynasty. Korea last dynasty, Joseon dynasty, existed 1392 2010, but Korea also became the colonization of Japan from the 1910 through 1945, when World War II is over. Please, next. So I'm talking about the social and economic condition of our last dynasty in Joseon. First one, Joseon dynasty is very poor country, very poor country. So can you see left side of the slide, the photos? This is our traditional house. It's looks very beautiful, but in a real term, this is very poor. Number two, very serious class struggle, especially many Koreans, they fight over the ownership of land. So this is a very critical case. And then, please, next. So also, Joseon dynasty was very full of element of feudal society. So during our last dynasty, we have our own language, is called Hangul. But during the Joseon dynasty, actually Chinese character normally used to in our society. So it means that many Koreans, they cannot understand the language and literacy. So it means that only 8% of our people could understand the letter of the Chinese character. So in short, Joseon dynasty was a very kingdom with very poor life and high literacy and high feudal elements. So what happened after that? Please, next. You know that dismantling feudal elements through the three occasions. Number one, the victim of Japanese colonization, so starting the dismantling feudal elements, especially Hangul, Korean traditional the language widely spoken and then used to, instead of Chinese character. This is the big challenge. And then number two is a land reform we made, 1949 through 1951. Because, as I said earlier, Joseon dynasty, the ownership of land is a major reason for the class struggle, but government decided to land reform. It means that restricts the size of holding the land. This is very critical, very important. the occasion to dismantling the ownership of the land struggle. Lastly, in North and South Korea, they fight each other 1950-53. So this war, civil war, ruled and changed traditional the social pattern and economic pattern across the country. This is very, so through the three occasions, Korea almost dismantling federal element. Next. So also 1972, our president Park Chung-hee just started so-called Semaul Undong. Semaul means that regional and rural improvement movement. So can you see what the photo? This photo is showing that during the Semaul movement, the rural village, they're changing the house, the roof of house. Before our the house is very poor condition. Now it's a new one. This is one of the example of how the Semaul movement is impact on the normal life of the rural people. So through this movement, what kind of four major the element is started? Number one, can do it split. It means the Korean society now from the passive to dynamic mindset. And then number two, reform of rural villages. So I already explained. Number three, eliminating federal elements, removing the mindset of believing in superstition. So, and then number four, change of agricultural life. Before this Semaul Undong, rural people worked during the April to October. But during the November to March, they spend their most of the time they are in the gambling or drinking alcohols. But due to the Semaul movement, the agricultural life is changed. Okay, next slide. And then, what is the result of Semaul movement? Number one, now, before Korea society is not equal society, but during the, before Semaul movement, Undong, and also, the Korean War and all the occasion changing Korean society become unparalleledly equal society. So equal society. This is very unique. So in the world, I'm definitely saying that now, before 1990, Korea is mostly unprecedentedly very equal society. And then also, number two is that from the Semaul movement, this kind of the positive element was brought about. First one, this is a basis, to provide the basis for long-term economic development. Number two, brought about the mindset escaped from the federal element. Number third, no literacy. Now in Korean society, 100% literacy, and then very high education. So this slide, the photo is show that during the 1960s, 1970s, during our economic development, our ladies, they're working at the factory. However, they are over there working, maybe from the 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock p.m., they are going to school, and then London. And then they had the opportunity to get the education. Also, during the the Semaul movement, also work very hard and very quickly. And then also the mindset change. Before also Korea is saying that every day they are late, the promised time. But through this movement, we change the mindset. We became the more punctuality. And then we know that realized how to important the concept of opportunity cost. Okay, next slide. So I will not explain this one, but this is a history of economic policy of Korea. Number 70s, we start the export promotion, and then 1972, Korean government also introduced heavy and chemical industry policy. It's very, very important. But I'm talking about the 1997, 1998 economic crisis for Korea. Because due to this economic crisis, Korean society very much faced the economic crisis, and then after that, Korean society totally changed. So, please, next one. Only I'm showing that this is how to contrasting two area, but not two area. This is a same area. One is that the 1950s. This is we call it the Cheonggyecheon, very poor situation. But 50 years later, same location, but it's widely changed. We call it the miracle of the Han River. And then next please. So this is our Korea society 1974. Korea economic growth is very high, enjoyed a very high rate of economic growth. However, due to the that economic crisis 1997, Korean society, I'm saying that very changed. So I'm saying that before 1997, many Koreans think that they're living in a very equal society. However, also they also believe that they can do it or anything without any social or religious constraints if they study very hard. I'm sorry, without. And then the next slide is showing that how achieve the economic growth during the, from the 1917 to 2020. Can you see it? 1997, 1998, 9% of economic growth. 1992, from the 1980, 1990, almost 10%. But as our economies become saturated, our economic growth rate has become less and less. Now we are 2% or 3% economic growth is very high now. So this is before 1997. But next slide. So that's why I'm saying that how 1997 Asian financial crisis impact our social life and economic condition. During the 1997, Korea also borrowed $53 billion from the IMF and other financial institutions. Korea is trying to work very hard, and then 1.5 years later, Korea completed the repayment of $53 billion. So, but very simple, we have worked very hard. The problem is that we recover our economic crisis. Problem is that the painful and very, that pay the big price. So left side is showing that after our economic structure is changed. Before, for example, before lifetime employment is very prevalent, but after economic crisis, lifetime employment is disappeared. So this is showing how our society is changing. So next slide. So I'm saying that what changed of Korean society after 1998? First one, widen disparity of wealth among the people. This is very serious. Number two, the spirit or belief that Korean can do it or get anything if they study very hard is gradually disappearing. Number 30, a lot of policies enabling equal chance are gradually disappearing. For example, bar examination or universal entrance system before provide very equal chance. But after economic crisis, new government they're trying to that introduce the system, not giving the more equal chance. So this is a very serious problem. Also, the polarization among the generation or the male or female also very prevalent. So this is a very serious problem for Korean society. In short, window or the ladder of opportunity are gradually closing. This is my conclusion. But after, so I'm trying to topic for addressing inequalities in society. So there are many topics, many controversy is coming. Also, is they're going on in Korean society. First one, who are responsible? individual or society. Somebody saying, so lack of individual efforts, and then they are asking more, demanding for their wealth or others, or even the power. But also, in the other hand, state or society cannot address all problems on inequalities. So this is very important question. Who are responsible? Number two, what are best choice in a situation, very limited resources, the past or the future? Because it's very simple. We have only very few limited resources. We need to focusing on the education of a young generation, or we have to compensation of the older generation. This is a very also critical question. So, for example, Korean government introduced a pension scheme for over 65 years old. The person, how they require a lot of taxation, but somebody saying that limited money, limited resources should be invested or used for the future education, not the compensation of the old generation. Number third, also the resources are very limited. So, benefit or welfare should be universal or the selected area. During the Corona period, Korean government has announced many government subsidy to the people, but main focus is that rich people should not get any the government subsidy. This is the main topic. But somebody saying the older the government subsidy should be made without any the regardless of the the rich person or bad person or no small the money. So this is a very critical controversy and then topic in Korea. Next. And then, what is the first? Many people saying we need the economic file, we should be grown. After that, we can start, the compensation. But somebody saying, no, we cannot waiting. We just starting now. We have to distribute our wealth to people. So, and then, also, another one is that who are responsible for rising state of debt? State, the deficit is very serious in every country. Now it's average 110% of the across the world. Now the average the government debts. So, but however, that many people are saying that who is responsible for the rising debts? Very simple. You are ready to pay more taxation. This is very critical challenge. Also, sometimes we have to get equal chance for the older people. They are trying to changing the system. For example, university entrance system. But sometimes this change making some sacrifice, some families, so that families are ready to sacrifice. This is a very critical challenge, critical question. So my point is very simple. In short, there is no clear-cut solution for addressing inequalities. So finally, last slide. So my view of addressing inequalities. So this is a very critical question. I'm not answer because I don't have no clear-cut answer. But actually, across the world now, MG generation talking about the lack of equal opportunities. This is a very critical challenge. So I'm asking you, your society, your country is fully paying attention to this matter or this demand. This is a very critical challenge. Number two, many countries talking about inclusive economic policies. Inequality are really being addressed, even though you're talking about inclusive economic growth? This is a very critical challenge. Also, number three, people should get out of the illusion that current level of GDP or asset will be continuously maintained. No, economically, this is not this concept, economy is a flow concept, not continued, not maintained. So if there is no sufficient revenue from the taxation, you cannot get anything. And very simple, my conclusion is that there is no free lunch. Everybody, they have to pay the taxation. This is very important. Lastly, now it's an AI era. Job will be disappear in a large scale way. What is the solution? So government have to support and then introduce the basic income support system, but this is a require huge taxation. So this is a critical challenge. So I'm asking what comes from the money. So this is my view about the addressing inequalities from the experience of Korean society. Thank you for your listening. Yeah.
Thank you, Ambassador Park. Now, Kosovo's diplomatic engagement has been shaped by its commitment to democracy, fairness, and economic resilience as a young nation navigating global challenges. In recent years, Kosovo has focused on strengthening partnerships, promoting rule-based international cooperation, and ensuring its economic growth is anchored in equality, equity, and social inclusion. I now invite His Excellency Luljim Plana, Ambassador of the Republic of Kosovo to Bangladesh, to the podium. Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Zilur Rahman. Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's quite an honor for me to be again here on this podium and then to talk about the Republic of Kosovo and how do we see all of this, especially with the topics of the today. I will not introduce any kind of slides for today, but I will share with you a brief history of my country, Kosovo, and then we'll talk about the topics and how do we see all the collaboration and inclusiveness and the fairness right now. The Republic of Kosovo emerged since the Yugoslavia dissoluted, and then it was quite in the 80s and 90s as we had our troubles within that region, and then started all about that with the independence of the countries, and so that we moved slowly towards our goal, what we had. It was a very terrible time for us, times under pressure, more than 20 years. And then after that, we had the war, the international intervention into Kosovo, so that in '99 we got the freedom thanks to our international partners from the United States, EU, and the NATO members. So that we are very thankful to that. So that after that, we had the international community and the United Nations, and a part of this was also Bangladesh officers that also they took part into such missions, to what we are very grateful to that. The history of Kosovo in the past is like the history of Bangladesh. We shared the same vision and aspiration for our independence. So that after that time, after we had the international community then in Kosovo, we thought that we need to have a clearance about our status, so that from 2005 and 2007, we had discussion on the dialogue, how can we about the status of Kosovo, so that we declared our independence then in 2008, and shortly after that, the Republic of Kosovo also managed to supervise independence in a 4 years term, so that the decision was that Kosovo can sustain and then move ahead. Or one of, and the clear goal is Euro-Atlantic integration. Of course, Kosovo is part of the European soil and the European continent, and this remains our key priority and our key goal. Kosovo now is moving ahead. We are named as the young Europeans. The demography of our country is more than 75% under 35, so that there is a vibrant society and a vibrant nation within 6, 7 communities within that they are really as an added value for our country. The recent past marked the region of the Western Balkans within 3 problems what we had. First, after the emerging of the countries from the former Yugoslavia, then the region had problems first with the names and then with the territories and the problem. But the main and the key points were the name of North Macedonia and Greece. We had the Kosovo and Serbian dialogue. And the third is Bosnia. The first one has been solved. Now we got this kind of peaceful about this name, a peaceful agreement between North Macedonia and Greece. We are having a dialogue with Serbia since 2011. This is some kind of normalization of the relations between Kosovo and Serbia, what we have. This has also been since 2011. And the third one, and the most problematic, I think, in the European soil, it is Bosnia, in that region. But let me tell one other more problem that is somehow facing at the moment is the war in Ukraine. This is somehow that we are now faced and challenged by this war. It's not about the territories, it's also about the values, what do we share. The Republic of Kosovo supports European Union, it supports Ukraine, and it's aligned with the European Union. On the other terms, what we are moving ahead about the fairness, the Republic of Kosovo is willing and trying to get as much as possible part of the European Union. Why is that for us important? And of course, the NATO alliance. This is all about the security, and this is about the prosperity of the entire region. But not all of us in that region wants to move into that direction. The 6 countries from the Western Balkans, now we are trying to be part of the European Union. Some of them, they are just showing as a kind of readiness to join European Union, but they really don't want to be as a part of that. For example, as Serbia is. For Kosovo, I can speak and say that we will keep maintaining. Of course, we will keep and do our work to join the European Union, and then to see what does this also mean for all of us in this time of the geopolitical shifting. Having this in mind, talking about also in the regional aspect, and looking into that terms, how's going on and how is somehow all of these create this geopolitical shifting, but also having such kind of opportunities for other powers to show themselves means for us that we need to stick to each other, especially in the regional term. We want to have an inclusive Balkan join to the European Union, but on the other side, we want to be also part of this international relation, or to show that our voice is also heard as a small countries. That means that for us is more important that the also small countries, they should stick together and of course exchange much more. This is also one of my topic or one of our endeavors that we need to do in this time. Of course, to share and then to see what can we do together in terms of not to being somehow left aside, having this in mind, what's happening around the world. Kosovo believes that fairness must guide the policies of the future. Fairness is not as an abstract principle. It has practical meaning. It requires also economic opportunities reach not only the cities, but also in the rural communities. In Kosovo, we see digital transformation as a chance to increase fairness. Digital public services, telemedicine, online education, and technological entrepreneurship can reduce the gap between regions and communities. Looking ahead, reimagining prosperity requires also political courage. Kosovo stands ready to contribute to this vision. We are committed to building a society where fairness is not only a slogan, but it's also a daily practice. We are ready to strengthen cooperation with the Balkans, within Europe, the partners in Asia and Africa, and also in the Indian region. Thank you so much. I will be glad to have some more conversation or any other questions with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Luljim. Germany's foreign policy places strong emphasis on social justice, fair economic system, and an international order built on trust and rules. Germany has been a vocal advocate for reducing inequality, supporting sustainable development, and advancing fair supply chains globally. As competition intensifies in the Indian Ocean region, Germany continues to support models of prosperity that are environmentally responsible and socially balanced. Please welcome His Excellency Rudiger Lorz, Ambassador of Germany to Bangladesh.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, thanks for being here. Dear organizers, thanks for organizing this panel, also for confronting us with about the most complex topic that you possibly can imagine. From growth to fairness, growth is a difficult term. Growth is no doubt important, but growth alone doesn't result immediately in development. Expanding the GDP by a high growth rate, doesn't automatically lift everyone. And we have seen that in so many countries in the world, in so many societies. I've been to many countries where you see quite impressive growth rates, and then you wonder what actually comes down to change the average life of people. So growth, yes, growth is an economic objective. It's not a moral one, and it doesn't really in itself automatically solve problems, because while growth can rise, it can also hollow out the foundations of a society when it leads to a bigger gap between affluent people and those who are not. I would say growth tells us how big an economy is, but it's also about the fairness of a society, and the fairness of the society tells us how strong the society is. So the question is not always how fast are we growing, the question is also how are we growing, who is growing, what is growing, and who is left behind. And I think inequality is not a collateral damage of prosperity or of growth. It's actually an obstacle. Now you are living here in a region with very impressive growth rates, in particular in this country. And this region, I think, can become a region of shared prosperity, but also the opposite is possible. And the opposite of inequality is not equality. The opposite of inequality is actually opportunity. Perhaps let me have 3 remarks, 3 points. I believe really that increasingly fairness in a society is a strategic asset. because a fairer society is more stable, it's more resilient, it's also more attractive to investment. Because unfair societies pay compound interest on fragility, and they pay it through political unrest, through street protests, to populism, eventually to less productivity and brain drain. So I think the challenge is how to come from an economy of quantity to an economy of dignity. From growth measured in numbers to prosperity that is really felt in everyday life of people. And I think that's obviously also a challenge in Bangladesh. Fairness is stability. It's a geopolitical variable. More inequality results in more volatility. And fairness is really not a luxury of rich societies. It's really a precondition for stability, but also for stability in the broader region. And that leads me to the second remark: prosperity needs agency. It's really about the question who gains from growth. And one element of that is, of course, growth needs to come with the growth of jobs, and that comes with skilled labor. Otherwise, it results in frustration. The digital transformation that we will go to see all over the world, increasingly over the next years, will further deepen these gaps unless skills and access to these jobs will follow. We all believe in a globalized economy and an export open society, and Bangladesh has, I think, benefited largely from this, but it is also important to make sure that these export corridors don't only enrich elites, but it's really a value chain that triggers down to the whole population. And that requires also that things are built locally, that the technology transfer happens, and that there is investment in human capital, and that safety nets are strengthened. Now, this is a difficult task, and obviously I don't have the answers easily to that. But I do know that people don't wait to promises of trickle down and the promise that things will be better in the long run, because you know the famous saying, in the long run we will all be dead. But people want dignity, they want to have agency, they want to be active participants in growth. And the third remark, and we have seen that in the previous panel as well on climate change. There are so many challenges that are global, challenges that have to be addressed globally or regionally. And I believe regional cooperation is key. And South Asia is probably one of the regions in the world where you have least regional cooperation. Now, in Europe, it took us a long time to come to that point, but now we are at this point of regional cooperation. You know perhaps that we have a joint Franco-German embassy here. So if I leave my office opposite in the same building without any control of fence is the office of the French ambassador. This is what I mean with regional cooperation, trust and confidence amongst partners to address all these issues, because there are so many shared vulnerabilities in the world. We all depend on maritime trade routes. We depend on energy transition, on climate adoption. These are all topics that need collective responses. Water security, food security, migration, a long list that no country in itself can address, no matter whether it's a developed country like ours or an emerging country like yours. This kind of cooperation is key. And that means we need a rules-based system politically, but also rules-based trading system. I know there's lots of criticism about the rules-based order, and of course any rules-based order is dependent on who makes the rules. But there is, at the end of the day, no alternative to that. The world needs this kind of order, and in particular countries, smaller countries, vulnerable countries, need it most of all. So only through this kind of order, of cooperation, countries can have the necessary leverage in negotiations and connect with each other to fight for their rights. I leave it with that, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. The United Kingdom has long emphasized inclusive development, equitable access to opportunity, and resilient economic system as pillars of its foreign policy. Through its work across South Asia, the United Kingdom has focused on poverty reduction, fair governance, and strengthening societies so that prosperity benefits those who need it most. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. James Goldman, Deputy High Commissioner and Development Director of the British High Commission in Dhaka, to share his remarks. Mr. James Goldman.
Thank you very much. I'd like to echo the sentiments of colleagues. It's a real honor to be invited to speak here today. I'm going to just say a few words on kind of really focusing down on the sort of UK-Bangladesh collaboration around this question in particular, in part because I wouldn't want to repeat sort of some of the excellent remarks that colleagues have made already. So I think just to echo maybe one of the points that's come out in all the previous speakers is obviously global growth has lifted millions out of poverty, and it's raised livelihoods, raised quality of life around the world. But recent shocks, the pandemic, cost of living crisis, pressures have exposed deep inequalities, and that's something that resonates, I think, around the world and really is a common feature of politics and political discussion right around the world at the moment. This question of not just how fast are our economies growing, but who is benefiting is something that is one that resonates around the world. And Bangladesh's story shows both sides, strong GDP growth and poverty reduction, yet growing challenges in governance, corruption, job creation, and climate vulnerability. GDP growth will continue to be the key engine that lifts people out of poverty, but it must deliver broad benefits to the societies. And the UK and Bangladesh, as I say, face shared challenges going forward. Creating jobs for skilled graduates will be critical, particularly with AI and new technologies, as was previously noted, will disrupt many industries and many traditional forms of employment. I think that Bangladesh has a wonderful opportunity, probably more so than most countries, in terms of this ability to rewire the system, to take a progressive approach, particularly as we approach LDC graduation. Bangladesh's tax to GDP ratio, I think, is well known to be now below 7%, is one of the world's lowest. And so this is an opportunity, I think, to really think about what kind of progressive tax structure the country would like to have in the future. Because increasing tax revenue, as we heard in one of the previous presentations, is essential to fund those public services, education, health, and infrastructure that not just underpin inclusive growth and resilience and fairness, but will also drive future growth and through middle income to higher income status. And it's with this stronger domestic resource mobilization that critical services can be funded, but also address some of the key issues around equality and fairness. So just a word on the UK-Bangladesh partnership then. So we have been talking in recent years about a partnership, and a partnership that's focused on mutual growth through trade investment and strong ties, sharing both expertise and also looking at investment and trade in both directions. Bangladesh is the #1 beneficiary of the UK's trading countries trading scheme. And Bangladesh enjoys duty-free access, which will allow continuity post-LDC graduation. And this has been recently upgraded with simplified rules of origins as well. And we are very keen as the UK to provide that assurance and continuity that post-LDC graduation, Bangladesh will enjoy the same levels of access to the UK market as it does today for the foreseeable future. Increasing foreign direct investment is also essential for Bangladesh's future growth, and the UK supports reforms to improve the investment climate and strengthen institutions to attract high-quality foreign investment. We are also working closely with the Bangladeshi Bank and key ministries to modernise financial systems and improve governance, and we believe that central bank independence is important for monetary policy credibility and for maintaining economic resilience. Even in this uncertain world, the UK is also seeks to promote a resilient, innovative, and globally connected economy. And we hope that for international partners, the UK offers stability, world-leading sectors, and a clear plan for sustainable growth. And it's through collaboration with countries like Bangladesh that we see a path forward to an equitable, more inclusive future. I'd also like just to say a word, given the previous panel was on climate change, on our partnership on climate change. So we're very proud to say that at COP30, I should say, not COP 2030. At COP30, we showcased achievements from our partnership with Bangladesh, particularly focused on adaptation. And there were events at both the UK Still Pavilion and the Bangladesh Pavilion to highlight some of this work on adaptation and nature at the Centre for Global Climate Action. Finally, I'm just going to echo some of the comments of the previous speakers around global cooperation. So the world has seen growing challenges of the rules-based international order and a rise in protectionism. And this highlights the need for stronger trading relationship with partner countries, such as the one that we enjoy between the UK and Bangladesh. The UK champions, as my colleagues do, a fair global trade system, climate finance reforms that enable sustainable growth as well. UK support with trade preferences and advocacy for transparent, rules-based systems to help countries such as Bangladesh maintain competitive post-LDC graduation. So finally, I'd just like to close and say that prosperity in the 21st century must be shared. It must be a partnership. We believe it must be win-win to be sustainable. And we are keen and proud to partner Bangladesh on this trajectory. Growth without fairness, as the previous colleague mentioned, is fragile and potentially leads to increased instability. The Bay of Bengal region can lead by example, combining economic dynamism with inclusive policies, and as was noted previously as well, there is huge potential within this region, not just within the individual countries, but to work together to really unlock human capital, to unlock growth, and to create opportunities for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Australia's foreign and development policy in the Indo-Pacific centers on fairness, stability, and partnership built on mutual respect. Australia has consistently championed equitable growth, climate resilience, and inclusive regional cooperation. As the Indian Ocean becomes a strategic arena, Australia continues to advocate for prosperity that is both sustainable and shared. I now welcome Her Excellency Susan Ryle, Australia's High Commissioner to Bangladesh, to address us.
Assalamu alaikum, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin by thanking Zilla Rahman and his team at the Centre for Governance Studies for organising another successful Bay of Bengal conversation. I understand it's now in its fourth iteration, if I'm correct, and it's quickly established itself as the preeminent geopolitical forum in Bangladesh, which the Australian High Commission is proud to support. So I commenced as Australia's 17th High Commissioner to Bangladesh. I started in February this year, and I can't think of a more interesting time to take up this role, and take forward a relationship built on more than 50 years of trust, cooperation, and friendship. And in nearly 1 year since my arrival, I've witnessed profound changes that have occurred since the July uprising last year. And I look forward to seeing free, fair, and participatory elections in 2026. I've also seen our bilateral relationship grow across key areas, including growth in our two-way trade to more than $5 billion every year, the announcement of our 2025 to 2030 Development Partnership Plan, which was announced during our recent visit by Minister for Development, Dr. Anne Ali, a visit by Australia's Ambassador for Climate Change, and the deepening maritime security cooperation between our Defence Forces and Coast Guard. So these developments in the Australia-Bangladesh bilateral relationship demonstrate the relevance of the themes of this year's Bay of Bengal conversation and the theme of this session, which discusses the need to balance economic growth, strategic interests, and, as my colleagues have been discussing, social fairness. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we meet here in Dhaka, we face a range of challenges and emerging opportunities that affect our businesses and their supply chains, our regional and global security, and sustainable development. And it won't be a surprise to any of you when I say we are living in an era of increased geostrategic competition, which has the potential to threaten our shared security. And today's challenges are more complex, they're interconnected, and they have a compounding effect. Climate change and natural disasters, as we've heard in the last session, are increasing in scale, regularity, and cost. Debt, inflation, fiscal pressures are converging, as we've heard from my colleagues just now, and developing countries and their most vulnerable citizens are bearing the greatest cost of change. So our increasingly complex world means that we are living at a time where we need international cooperation the most. This is a time of emerging challenges, but also opportunities for Australia, Bangladesh, and our region. So, of course, I'm a diplomat, not an academic, so I would like to use this opportunity to talk about Australia's foreign policy, how we see the region, and, of course, our bilateral relationship with Bangladesh. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you how Australia conceives our region, our vision, and how we are working to make that vision a reality. For Australia, our region, what we actually term as the Indo-Pacific, stretches from the west coast of the Americas to the east coast of Africa. It's a big region, and it's our home. Our interests, concerns, and our priorities centre here, as does our development and future prosperity. Australia advocates for an Indo-Pacific where all countries are free to exercise their own agency and contribute to a regional balance of power where no country dominates and no country is dominated. This means Australia seeks an Indo-Pacific region in which we all can live according to our own laws and values as determined by our citizens, pursue our own prosperity, make our own choices, and cooperate, trade, thrive through mutually respectful relations with others. And it almost goes without saying, but the Indian Ocean region, the Indo, in what we refer to as the Indo-Pacific, is vital to Australia's security and prosperity, as it is for both of our countries. The sea lines of communication that run across the Indian Ocean are critical for maritime interests, and with more than 1/3 of global maritime trade moving through this sea, it's vital to our futures. I also just wanted to touch on something that's slightly different for Australia. It's worth noting that Australia views our region through our multicultural lens. Australia comes from more than 300 different ancestries from the Indo-Pacific region and beyond, enhancing and diversing our culture. Australia has First Nations heritage and an immigrant multicultural character. And as our Foreign Minister has said, Australia sees itself in the world in the same way the world sees itself reflected in us. Bangladesh is very much part of the multicultural story of Australia. We have an active and growing Bangladeshi Australian diaspora community with around 75,000 people with Bangladeshi heritage calling Australian home. We have over 24,000 Bangladeshi students currently studying in Australia this year, who all contribute to the multicultural story that Australia, through through all facets of society, including academia, culture, commerce, and sport. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's against this backdrop that Australia and Bangladesh are working together to support economic growth, regional stability, and as we're talking about today, social fairness. I wanted to give you a few examples of what we're doing here in Bangladesh through our Development Partnership Plan, which outlines how we will work together towards sustainable development, equitable growth, and stability. We're focusing on skills development, climate change, gender equality, governance reform, and social protection. Our focus on education and skills development through USEP and Australia Awards, for example, enables economic opportunities for Bangladeshis and supports social stability. But we also ensure that no one is left behind. Between 2012 and 2024, Australia's strategic partnership with BRAC and Canada, who you'll hear from soon, has helped around 1 million households to lift themselves out of extreme poverty. We're also focusing on advancing gender equality, including through locally led approaches to women's leadership, gender equitable climate action and humanitarian assistance, and women's economic equality and inclusive trade. Because we know when we draw on the talents and experience of the whole population, not just half the population, we deliver better outcomes and economic growth for everybody. And we also recognise that the threat of the climate crisis to livelihoods, security and prosperity is urgent for Bangladesh as it is for Australia. It affects the most vulnerable and it disproportionately affects women and girls. So Australia is working with Bangladesh to strengthen climate mitigation, adaptation and resilience. And this includes livelihood support and social protection so vulnerable communities can withstand and recover from climate and disaster shocks. So ladies and gentlemen, just finally, we all want to do what is best for our nations, our region and the international order, of which we are all custodians. Given the challenges today, Australia remains committed to working with Bangladesh as a long-standing trusted partner to build a region and a world that is stable, prosperous, peaceful and fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Excellencies, thank you for your insightful and powerful reflections. You have reminded us that fairness is not an abstract aspiration. It is a strategic necessity, especially in a region where the pressures of inequality interest with the realities of geopolitics. The pathway to shared prosperity is not granted, but today's remarks offer a compass for how we might pursue it with clarity and conscience. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moderator, respected panelists. Now, all the eminent dignitaries are cordially requested to come in front of the stage for a formal photograph. Thank you.
I'm sure you get something.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Surat Rana Rushmi welcoming you all to another key segment of the Bay of Bengal conversation. Bangladesh and Canada share over 5 decades of warm partnership strengthened through development, cooperation, growing trade, and a shared commitment to inclusive progress. At this stage of the program, we turn to our key address by His Excellency Ajit Singh, High Commissioner of Canada to Bangladesh. His insights continue to guide meaningful collaboration across diplomatic, cultural, and development spheres. I kindly request your gracious attention as we welcome His Excellency forward for his remarks. Thank you.
That was just a practice run. I wanted to say it was a really fantastic panel. I want to maybe start by just saying, just extending my condolences to the victims and families of those affected by the recent earthquake. I know all of us here were quite impacted by it, and I just wanted to send my sincerest condolences to those impacted by that. And now, Excellencies, distinguished guests, distinguished delegates, colleagues and friends, thank you for the opportunity to speak today at the Bay of Bengal conversation. Mr. Rahman, I don't know where you are, but you're right there. This was one of my first engagements when I arrived a year ago, and I was quite amazed by it. I'm quite amazed by the diversity of the crowd, both young, more senior, from all walks of Bangladeshi society, different groups, minority groups, and this is really a critical conversation to be having together, where Bangladeshis are coming forth and having this dialogue to see how you can make your country a better place in the future. Now, again, it's a privilege to join so many leaders who are shaping the future of this region, a region that is central to the global economy and to Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy. Sticking to the theme of the previous panel, which was, a very timely one given the conversations happening in the country at large, I want to share how Canada is bringing together its development and trade agendas into a single coherent approach, one that supports mutual prosperity, regional resilience, and inclusive growth. One thing that's always great when we're Canada speaking after so many of our close partners is I think many of the themes that you'll be hearing from me will be similar to the ones you just heard. And I will speak specifically about Canada's longstanding partner and friend, Bangladesh, and how that's a cornerstone of this approach, especially at a pivotal moment for both our countries in our history and our democratic histories. So let me begin by situating Canada's priorities. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney's leadership, Canada has embarked on an economic renewal that embraces diversification, sustainability, and resilience. Not unlike Bangladesh, we are charting a future that is less dependent on any single market, more outward-looking, although we are already outward-looking nations, and more deeply connected to high-growth regions, especially the Indo-Pacific region. It's been in the news. Our Prime Minister has said Canada has a very ambitious goal of doubling non-US exports over the next decade, strengthening our supply chains, and cultivating new forms of cooperations with partners across Asia, as well as traditional ones. A key focus is doubling down on reliable partnerships, and friends. And that's partners like Bangladesh. This is not simply an economic pivot. It is a strategic investment in long-term stability and shared prosperity. But as many of my colleagues on the previous panel said, Canada also recognizes that trade alone does not create the foundations of resilient societies. Lasting prosperity requires healthy populations, strong institutions, empowering women, youth, and communities to withstand climate and economic shocks. That is why Canada, at this moment, is doing more than ever to align international assistance with its economic engagement. And on this regard, Canada's been we've been very proud of our relationship with Bangladesh since your independence. Of course, being amongst one of the first to recognize your independence, but also that over 6.3 billion since your independence in terms of development aid. But now we're looking at what more we can do to turn that aid into more opportunities for both our citizens. And again, when we're talking about development and trade, we know those two must reinforce each other. And in the Indo-Pacific and Bay of Bengal, one of the most dynamic but vulnerable regions, this alignment matters more than ever. So just to start, Canada's development cooperation is guided by a clear set of principles: gender equality, inclusion, sustainability, and economic partnership. We continue to invest in 5 key areas: health systems, because no society can thrive without a healthy population. We're quite proud of the work we've done with ICDDRB for many, many, many years. Climate resilience, because prosperity must withstand rising seas, cyclones, environmental stress. No one knows this more than Bangladeshis. Education and skills, because young people must be equipped to participate in tomorrow's economy. We saw this just over a year ago, and as the Australian High Commissioner mentioned, we're quite proud of our strategic partnership with BRAC. Inclusive governance is another area, because accountable institutions underpin both social stability and economic opportunity. This is something what the reform agenda has been about. We've been impressed by the reforms that have been proposed, things that are moving forward. I know it wasn't everything everybody wanted, but we need to make sure that we can build on this momentum, sustain it, and grow. And finally, as I previously mentioned, economic development, because the future ties between Bangladesh, Canada, our partners who are up here, will be defined by our robust and reliable trade and investment partnership. And across the Indo-Pacific, at this moment, Canada is scaling up these investments, including to strengthen climate resilience, improve health outcomes, and to foster inclusive economic growth. These are long-term commitments designed to lift communities, expand opportunities, and build conditions for shared prosperity. Now, Canada's approach rests on a simple but powerful idea. Development and trade are mutually reinforcing. When we strengthen institutions, businesses gain predictability and confidence. When we support health systems, we reduce the risk of pandemics and other shocks. When we empower women and marginalized entrepreneurs, we expand supply chains and create new market opportunities. And when we support climate adaptation, we protect communities and safeguard investments. Put simply, development builds the foundations for meaningful, sustainable growth and investment, while trade amplifies the economic impact of development investments. We believe that a country's development trajectory determines the inclusiveness of its growth and the quality of its partnerships. We heard from the South Korean ambassador about how this journey in South Korea happened and the challenges and how to avoid some of those challenges as you're figuring out your path to the future. So by aligning development and trade, Canada aims to create a virtuous cycle of stability, opportunity, and prosperity for all. Now, nowhere is this joined-up approach more relevant than here in Bangladesh. Canada sees Bangladesh as a dynamic, ambitious, and increasingly influential actor in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. You don't have to look further than, for example, the contributions of over 100,000 Bangladeshi Canadians in Canada. You can even look at the recent football match where a couple of Canadian citizens contributed to a very impressive outcome in the qualifier. With its young population, expanding manufacturing base, and strategic location of the namesake of this conference, the Bay of Bengal, Bangladesh is shaping regional connectivity, food security, and economic resilience. Our development cooperation reflects the importance of this relationship. Canada has invested heavily in sectors that underpin, from our perspective, inclusive growth, climate adaptation, health, economic empowerment of women and vulnerable groups, and skills training. These efforts to strengthen the very foundation of Bangladesh's success. At the same time, our commercial relationship is expanding. I'm sad I missed, the dynamic first couple days of this conference, but it was because we had our Canadian chief trade representative here. And she was here because Bangladesh is a priority market for Canadian wheat and pulses, but also for education services, clean technology, digital solutions, and responsible investment. One of the remarks she made to me as she was parting on her flight late yesterday was, there's so many areas here that we can engage in. Where do we focus? And it is a testament to the dynamic market and entrepreneurial spirit in this country. As both our governments pursue economic diversification, I know it's a priority for this government, but also the political parties that are coming afterwards. The scope for our collaboration is growing. We see opportunities in sustainable agriculture, green energy, waste management, climate resilient infrastructure, and this is just to name a few. And we see Canadian and Bangladeshi firms working closely together in ways that lift communities, create jobs, and build shared prosperity. Not just, that over 100,000 diaspora in Canada, but also the many alumni. I think there's a few amongst the organizers of this event who have studied in Canada or have come back and vice versa. Even just yesterday, we had a great meeting with the Dhaka Chamber, ACI Limited, Citigroup, just to name a few. Last week, we met with the Canada-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce, and the opportunities, they're just countless. Now, why does this approach matter to all of us? The Bay of Bengal region and Bangladesh stand at a crossroads. On the one hand, it is home to enormous economic potential, a hub of manufacturing, as I mentioned, trade, human capital. On the other hand, it faces very, very challenging situation. Climate vulnerability, demographic pressures, and infrastructure challenges, just to name a few. This is precisely why integrated development and trade cooperation can make a very transformative difference at this moment in the country's history. For Bangladesh, partnering with Canada means access to, a long-standing partner and friend for technology, capital, skills, markets. For Canada, partnering with Bangladesh advances our economic diversification at a critical time for us, supports stability in a critical region, aligns with our values of inclusion, sustainability, rule of law, multilateralism, shared prosperity. Ultimately, our vision is not transactional, it is generational at a pivotal moment in both our countries' histories. Now, Bangladeshis have shown for decades that they are incredibly resilient people. We want to continue working with you since your independence on continuing to build those conditions for long-term resilience. Resilient communities, resilient economies, and resilient partnerships. Whether it's in Dhaka, Sylhet, Chattogram, the host community in Cox's Bazar, as well as the Rohingya camps. These are places we need to do more together. Now, as we look ahead, the Bay of Bengal will not simply be at a crossroads of global commerce. It will be a proving ground for how nations collaborate in an era of uncertainty and accelerating change. The choices we make today, the partnerships we forge, the values we hold will shape not just our economies, but the security and dignity of our people. That's something that nobody knows better than Bangladeshis, given the last year that all of you have had. Canada's message is clear. We believe the most enduring prosperity is shared prosperity. I just listed the many ways our two countries are intertwined in our birth, but also what has happened since then, and we will be into the future. And we believe that trade and development, when aligned with local priorities, some of those priorities being articulated here over the conversations you just had, and driven by inclusion, are powerful engines of that shared success. Our commitment to Bangladesh and the wider region is long-term, principled, and forward-leading. We're not only here to respond to today's challenge, but to build tomorrow's possibilities. And with so many youth in the crowd, it's something really special to be here at this time to work with you to do that. That means greener industries, more resilient communities, stronger institutions, and opportunities to reach every corner of society. Canada stands ready to deepen this work, along with our partners who spoke on the panel immediately prior to this, as a partner, an investor, a development ally, but most importantly, since your independence, as a long-standing friend. So let us seize the moment. If we align our efforts, if we align our development with trade, inclusion with innovation, national priorities with regional cooperation, then we can deliver something far greater than growth. And what is that? We can deliver a more stable, more equitable, and more hopeful future for the people we serve. Onek onek dhanyabad.
Thank you, His Excellency, for your wonderful remarks. With this, now we have concluded our session. Everyone is requested to go to Oasis for the lunch, and the next session will be starting at the ballroom from 3 p.m. Thank you.